Hey guys, Paul here. So today I wanted to talk about Yu-Gi-Oh tournaments and the way that they're structured. This is actually based on another one of these Yu-Gi-Oh anonymous posts on Twitter. I've talked a little bit about one of these before. So yeah, it's this anonymous Twitter thing where people can submit hot takes and opinions, and I guess it's like, posted anonymously. This person says, most Yu-Gi-Oh tournaments would be better if they were double elimination. I don't want to stay extra rounds if I'm X2 just to lose the last round or bubble. So this is interesting because it's actually something that I've thought about quite a bit, and I didn't know that other people had considered the same thing, so this is cool. Let's start by quickly explaining the way that Yu-Gi-Oh tournaments currently work and sort of how a double elimination system would work, and we'll get into all that stuff. I'll try to make this simple, but it's kind of crazy, so you might want to just look it up on your own if you're confused. So Yu-Gi-Oh tournaments are run in something that's called a Swiss format. That's to say that everybody will play against somebody who has the same record as them. In the first round, obviously nobody has a record, so it's just kind of randomized, but if I win my first round, I'll play against somebody else who won their first round. My record is 1-0, their record is 1-0, so we play against each other. And let's say that I'm 4-0, like I've won 4 rounds and lost no rounds. I'll play against somebody else who is 4-0. And similarly, if I'm 2-3, I've won 2 rounds, I've lost 3 rounds, I should be paired against somebody who also has the same record. Now, this can be a little bit complicated, which I'll get into in a moment, but that's the gist of it. And so at the end of the tournament, the person who is either undefeated by the end of it all, or just the people who have the highest overall records will make the top cut if it's a larger event, or just, a person will outright win if it's a local event. This can get a little bit complicated though, because there are these things called tiebreakers. So I don't actually mean necessarily just ties, although that's also relevant. Ties are sort of calculated differently than wins and losses, and so it can get a little murky. But by tiebreakers, I mean, what happens if we're at this big, 2,000 person event, and after 10 grueling rounds of Swiss play, you and I have the same record. So I'm 8-2, and you're also 8-2. So who gets 32nd place, right? We're trying to determine top 32. Someone's going to get 32nd, someone's going to get 33rd. Should it be me? Should it be you? That seems a little bit weird, right? We have the same record. So what the system will do is it will look at what are called tiebreakers. Who did you play to get your results versus who did I play to get my results? The people that I played had worse records overall than the people you played, so you get in and I don't. But that doesn't feel very fair. I mean, we had the same record, right? And this also leads to a phenomenon that people will often call the bubble. So, when it comes to topping Yu-Gi-Oh events and things like that, typically once you go worse than X2, it's usually just the point where people will give up. If I'm X2, there's a small chance that maybe I could make that top cut, but once I go X3, it's just, okay, it's over with. This can get kind of rough in these middling rounds, like maybe round 6 and round 7, where you've lost 2 rounds, but you kind of want to keep playing to see if you can make it. But if you are to lose, then it's kind of like the bubble bursting. So that's kind of what people mean when they say, losing on the bubble or playing on the bubble. And it can feel like a bit of a disappointment when you sort of put yourself through that exertion and just end up losing anyway. And, there's sort of some controversy around that tiebreaker system and all that stuff. So, yeah. Now, compare, or I guess contrast this to the traditional double elimination system. This is where there's just, a bracket and, people get seeded into the bracket. And when you play against somebody, if you win, you just move on to the bracket. If you lose, you go down into what's called the loser's bracket. And so in the loser's bracket, you'll be playing against other people who've lost a round. And then when you lose in the loser's bracket, you're just eliminated from the tournament. Lots of sports and other games use this. It's very common. And there's, it's not a particularly complicated thing. The only, I guess, crazy part at the end is that the person who wins in loser's bracket will face the person who wins in winner's bracket, and they have to beat the winner's bracket person twice. Once to knock that winner into losers, and then now both players are playing from loser's bracket. So now whoever loses that is actually out, and then they can win. And so, yeah. Like I said, if that wasn't a great explanation, there's like videos and more visual explanations that can probably do it more justice, but that's the point. So what this person is saying is that Yu-Gi-Oh tournaments should be double elimination instead of Swiss because it would save people time and you wouldn't have to stay extra rounds. There's certainly some good and some bad that comes with this. I think that it would be cool to be able to track your progress through just a standard bracket. It would be nice to sort of be able to like look back at a bracket and easily parse information like, oh, who played against who, and you know, like just things like that. That's always kind of fun to look at, like what sharks are in losers bracket, sort of, you know, waiting to cause an upset or whatever. But I do think there are some small issues that come up. The first is kind of obvious: draws. So traditional brackets don't really leave any room for draws to happen. If there's a draw in Swiss, then there's a way for it to count, which is that both people just get 1 point. So like winning gets you 3 points in Swiss, losing in Swiss gets you 0 points, but if you get a draw, then you and the other person both get 1 point. It can be pretty important later on in kind of setting you above the rest of the competition with like top cuts and stuff, but in a standard elimination bracket, there can't be a draw. Someone has to win. So this would mean having to probably rework the time rules or something in order to force somebody to win, and there just wouldn't be able to be a draw. So you might have to go sort of revert back to some rule set where perhaps both players play until someone takes damage, and then that can get a little bit weird because like what if both players don't want to attack or have good reason not to attack? You could say that's stalling, but then what if like both players just lock up the field and nothing can be done? There's a bunch of floodgates and everything's been flipped face down by floodgate trap hole and nothing can be flipped and blah, 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 blah. So I feel like that's kind of the first issue, is that this sort of conflicts with the way that draws work. And that's just obviously not very fun. I think that the only other sort of issue that maybe you might have with a double elimination bracket is just that for newer players or younger players, I think Swiss offers them the chance to play a lot of rounds and play out the day. So even if you don't do well in a Swiss format event, you can always play the full day of matches in a Yu-Gi-Oh tournament, and the Swiss system will continue to match you with other people. So I think that if it's like your first big event and you don't really care how you do so much as you just want the experience, then I think that Swiss better serves more people in that regard. So it's not just like, oh, you know, a bunch of people get eliminated, because in like elimination style tournaments, I mean, like people kind of get eliminated in droves, and it can be a bit of a heartbreaker and sort of feel like you maybe didn't get your money's worth. Because if you go to a YCS and you pay 20 bucks and like you get knocked out in 2 rounds, that just might not feel very fun. Some people, you know, it's different. It just depends on how you view like wins, losses, and your time. And like, you know, like this guy, for instance, he values his time. He's like, okay, I'm X2, I just want to be done. But that's not the case for everybody. So, yeah, in that regard, I would say that it just sort of comes down to what you prefer. I, for one, would love to see Yu-Gi-Oh tournaments try out like a double elimination system. Now, for what it's worth, technically this does exist within the top cut, sort of. Like at YCS events, as I'm sure you guys know, if you follow them, they use single elimination after they reach top cut. But in single elimination, 1 loss and you're out. Double elimination can make for a somewhat longer day to be playing. But technically speaking, Swiss, that kind of equates to a long day too. So that's kind of more tournament logistics. I'm not, you know, a super expert or anything in that field, so I guess I would maybe defer to the judges or tournament organizers as to which one they think would be more practical here. But I certainly think that it would be neat to try out the idea of double elimination with a Yu-Gi-Oh tournament. I don't think it'd be perfect, but I don't know. How do you guys feel about it? Let me know down in the comments what you think of the idea of a double elimination style Yu-Gi-Oh tournament, if that's something that you would want to play in, or maybe you poke some holes into. What are the faults with that? How would that maybe not work so well? Okay, that's gonna be it. Hopefully you guys enjoyed the video and it was an interesting point of discussion. I definitely like reading about these Yu-Gi-Oh anonymous posts because, I don't know, they're hot takes, and hot takes make for great vids. So yeah, I'll see you guys in the next one. Pass turn.